when I said this? I'm not a big EQ guy, I don't know a lot of things. Well, I wasn't lying to you. I really didn't, and I still don't know much. But I was definitely onto something. My name's Derek and I play the electric guitar, and I am glad that you're here. Because I took what I did in that video a step further, and the amount of tones that I'm getting have been so incredibly inspiring. So the general idea in that video was to control an EQ pedal through Snapshots. That way I could have several different flavors of EQ available at my feet. The problem was that I missed my old Snapshots. I like to be able to control effects with it too, but I found a way that I could have both. And the kicker here is that it can be applied however you want it to. It doesn't have to be effects and EQ, but it opens up an exponential amount of settings that you can control with your feet. And it just makes this HX Stomp that much more versatile. Okay, so I'll be honest, my research wasn't super in-depth. What I did was I googled common 10-band EQ settings, but what I found were some pretty good results. Not too far down the search results, I found a forum that gave me this image, and this is more or less exactly what I was looking for. A variety of different tones that I could shape with a decent amount of precision with a 10-band EQ that would provide a really good variety for me. So what I did was I hopped into my HX Stomp, pulled up their 10-band EQ, and really just mimicked these settings. I got the Sparkly Clean, which sounds pretty scooped to me. The settings don't look particularly scooped necessarily, but it feels just really glassy. The mid boost is your standard hump curve with a little bit of gain. Now to be honest, I don't really understand this metal distortion one. If someone could fill me in the comments what that's really doing, to me it just sounds like a really nice hi-fi EQ. And as that, I would say it is fantastic. But I wouldn't say I come up with a metal tone when I throw a lot of gain on top of it. Regardless, it's good. And then who doesn't love to have a nice AM radio megaphone type of tone just in their back pocket? So with that little bit of research done, I built something that I think you'll like. Let me show you. So it all starts with a tone that I really like. I'm using the US Dripman Norm amp, but you can honestly use whatever you want. So we've got kind of a bass raw tone. Pretty standard signal chain. We've got a couple of drive options, a compressor, delay, and reverb. And so nothing too out of the ordinary. For our snapshots, I've talked about this before, but for number one, I've got a dryish snapshot. It's got a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay. For our second one, we've got, I named it Dotted, and it has the delay higher in the mix so that we can do more of a dotted sound that goes along with the tap. For our third, we've got Washed. The delay is a little bit lower, but the reverb's a little bit higher. And my newest one for the XL, for the fourth snapshot, is kind of your tin can reverb. Works well with some drive. So the next idea here is switching between presets, and that's where the EQ comes in. I've named this particular preset DGBM Flat EQ XL. And the main point there is the flat EQ. This one is just flat. But I copy pasted this preset 5 times and set this top right switch so that I can flip between them. Then I set up a 10-band EQ at the very front of each signal chain This one's flat. I could probably just not have it, but I went ahead and put it there anyway in case I decided to tweak it. Then we can hit this button to go to the next preset. This one's sparkle, so this one's more of a scooped kind of EQ. It's really got that glassy sound. For our next one, I've got more of a mid-boost EQ. And this is kind of that tube screamer feel. Works well with a lot of gain. Next, this one's called Metal, and that's because the chart that I found was called it Metal Distortion. It's really more of a hi-fi sound. I'm not a metalhead, so I don't understand how that fits. But it's just a nice hi-fi, clean kind of sound. And finally, I've got a lo-fi kind of AM radio sound. Kind of that megaphone kind of sound. Works really well for intros where a nice lo-fi sound fits. And next we loop back to the flat EQ. Now the cool thing about all this is that it's really easy to loop between them. I can do it kind of mid-song, so like I said, this AM radio is a really nice intro sound. Yeah, it's just the push of a button. That's all it takes. That's extremely useful for switching between them. Now there is a downside to all of this. Whenever you switch presets, the state that you saved it in is what you get it. You can leverage that to be really useful, but if you want it to be nice and uniform and leave everything default to off, that can be really difficult to do something like, say, go from your sparkle. Maybe you've got this nice glassy sound. It can be really cool to jump into the mid boost sound, but you know, I'm back clean again, which isn't bad, but sometimes I really want to be like super gainy. Now fortunately there's a way around that. You can plan for that. And if you just save the preset so that these guys are on, we can come back around, turn on our sparkle, we're soloing. So just like that, we already have it on. It requires a little bit of foresight, but it's not too difficult to plan around. And what I've found is that I tend to generally have preferred levels of gain and snapshots for each of these. And so I can just set them up in a way that makes the most sense for my own workflow. So for example, for the AM radio, we'll just turn that to washed. Save it. For the flat, maybe I'll want the amp drive on. On the sparkle, I like this Top Secret OD, and I also often like to start it off on this tin can preset. So we'll save that. Like I said, for the mid boost, a lot of the time I want super high gain. I'll also turn on the washed sound just to give it that stadium effect. Save that. For this one, I actually just like it clean. I generally just prefer it on the first snapshot with no gain. This is also one that I find makes really good intros, at least for my own workflow. So I'll keep it at that. And then it makes switching between them extremely useful because they're already in super usable states. So I find all these super useful to work through, and another cool thing is that with what I've been doing with my daily songs, I've got so many tones available to me just right here that it's incredibly inspiring. I can just pick it up, pick a tone, and see what comes out. It gives me that much variety. Besides saving them in preparation, it didn't require anything extra from me. It didn't require me flipping through and finding the right preset all the time. I didn't have to tweak anything because it's all already right there. So that's what I've come up with. I really love it. I think it's going to be my main driver for a while. And just for you, I've dropped a link to a folder, to a Google Drive folder in the comments. I would love for you to download it and check it out and let me know what you think. Now there is a caveat. Because it's 5 separate presets, you are going to need to make sure that the preset switch button is pointing to the correct next preset in order to get them to loop properly. If you don't know, you do this by going into the command center and assigning that foot switch to a preset, and then you just send it to the next one. And so for example, you can have 10A point to 10B, 10B point to 10C, 10C point to 10D, 10D point to 11A, and then 11A point back to 10A. Now it doesn't matter where they're at, but they do need to be linked together properly. I've also linked an HX Stomp one separate from the HX Stomp XL. It's going to have one fewer snapshot, so it's not going to have that tin can snapshot, and it's going to have fewer foot switch options for you. I have things assigned to switches 4 and 5, and I have the preset switch assigned, I think, to foot switch 3, so you'll need to turn off the tuner or reassign that. Regardless though, check it out, let me know what you think. I'm really excited about it, and I would love to hear your own iterations of this to find out maybe how it could be better or your own flair on it. And hey, if you're looking for some tips on something like tuning, something that everyone knows about, but maybe some aspects on it that you haven't thought about that could really help you stay in tune better,